I just hit record. Uh, and Matt, it's all you.
Sweet. Yeah, thanks for everyone being here. So, like Robin said, we were kind of going over topics to cover. Like this time of year seems as good as any to kind of look at this process in terms of utilizing data and feedback, not only in terms of like what information came in throughout the year through your different surveys or the mechanisms you use to get information on programming or from students or just internally your own objectives, but also like what improvements can we make not only to like programmatic stuff as a response to that feedback, but like what changes do we need to make around how we're collecting data? Because everybody knows like you're usually don't carve out time to do this mid-year. But if you can like hit the reset button on a new year, is as good a time as any to kind of change some of your processes. With what I'm presenting today, I don't know that there's going to be any like mind-blowing, new thing that I'm showing, but I want to at least kind of present kind of a baseline of best practices, common knowledge, and stuff you should be doing or consider doing. But then I also kind of wanted to create a few prompts or just spaces where people can kind of share out a little. I know a big part of the larger OTA community is just creating spaces for us to just learn from each other and figure out what other people are doing. So it's a little bit of both of those. So again, I'm going to kind of go over kind of the role that data can be um, kind of it can play within your Trio programs, how you can evaluate the information you are collecting, looking at some of the different strategies around are you collecting enough? What kind of information do you want to be collecting? Is it the right stuff? And then really emphasize at the back end, kind of like building a culture of feedback and like inquiry and like how can this be cyclical? If you're involved at all in like the grant writing process, evaluation is like an entire section in the grant. So in your approved grant proposal, you wrote this whole plan of how you're going to evaluate and like make changes based on those evaluation. Now, um, of all the sections you are definitely going back and looking at while you're actively in a grant. Like you're looking at your staffing stuff when you hire, your plan of operation is pretty centered on what you do. The budget plays a big role. Like I don't know how often people are like really combing through their evaluation processes. So there's probably some good stuff in there, but you also want to ensure, even from a compliance point of view, that you are kind of doing that. But a lot of what people write in there is like, how do we build this like feedback loop system where we collect information, collect data, make changes to improve our processes and systems and programming, and then just like rinse repeat. So just wanting to emphasize that at the end. And then again, just kind of opportunities for maybe creating some action plans, creating some steps of stuff you want to implement moving forward, and opportunities to share out. So in terms of kind of the importance that data plays in TRIO programs. I don't need to spend long on here, but why does it matter? At the in basic compliance senses, like you want to make sure you are getting enough information to complete your APR. So this is one area where regardless of what you wrote in your grant or what is maybe even helpful for your day to day, having some idea of what is requested when you're completing your APR for your students is really helpful because it should dictate the kind of information you collect throughout the year. If you've been a part of that process at all and you maybe get to columns or they're asking information and you're like, I don't know, like I didn't know this isn't part of my objective, like I didn't know I was supposed to collect this information. Kind of knowing what those different areas of information they want can help dictate the kind of information and data we collect from students throughout the year. So it can help you just have more accurate APR reporting. In the grant renewals, like I just said, like you're always writing to, um, this kind of section within the grant itself. So not only should this stuff help lead to meeting your objectives and having good performance, but you're also going to have to like write sections around evaluation in the grant proposal itself. So the more work you do on the front end, the easier it is to just kind of like lay out what you're already doing versus having to like out of the blue just kind of craft what your plan is going to be within your program. And then um, like I said, like theoretically, if Department of Education ED were to come in and do like a full program audit evaluation, like they're looking at your approved grant to ensure that you are in compliance, not only with like the laws, but also with what you said you were going to do. So if you, what you are actually doing from an evaluation standpoint is completely out of line with what you wrote in your approved grant proposal in that evaluation section, like that could cause red flags in terms of, you're not doing what you said you were going to do. Like you laid out this entire section that was scored, probably got a perfect score. So like, why aren't you doing that? So I'll kind of consistently emphasize, I don't know that I'm touching on it a lot here, but it is important to at least review that before you make substantial changes and ensure that whatever you're doing kind of fits within the context that you wrote in the approved grant itself. And then really the main reason that I think a lot of us are here is we want to just see continuous improvement with like the shifting landscape of higher ed and the students we serve. Like their needs are constantly changing, their interests are constantly changing. You can have workshops that were so highly attended for 2 years and then out of the blue, like nobody's coming anymore. Like why. You want to be able to like get information, hopefully, that helps you make informed choices to not only better serve your students, but to like sleep better at night because nobody likes planning events or doing programming that like nobody shows up for or that people aren't finding value in because you're spending a lot of your time and effort and probably grant dollars to put on these events. And then lastly, and one thing I want to touch on a lot today is like the data we get can help demonstrate our impact to the stakeholders. It's a great way to show off. Usually we collect all this stuff. You might look at it and like make some informed decisions between you and your team on what to do moving forward. But rarely do we like put that on some kind of like newsletter headline and show off, even if just on our own campus, to demonstrate the impact we're having. So I really want to emphasize today the need to like not only collect it, use it, but to like kind of toot your own horn a little bit to ensure that the people on your campus understand the impact you're having on students. So obviously, when we're looking at data, there's kind of the quantitative and qualitative. So quantitative, these are all things that have like a measurable number. So whether that is services provided, you are tracking the number of tutoring services used or academic advising sessions done with students. You can track their GPA, retention, graduation. Like those are all kind of quantitative numbers that you can track to show progress with your students and improvement with your students. But often the qualitative is where the most value comes in because that's where we can really get their opinions. The quantitative looks great at scale to show our impact, but doesn't always show you, what workshop is best used. So qualitative, that's where the surveys, testimonials, focus groups, just getting kind of informed opinions from students. And all of these kind of play a role in what it is that we are doing. So I kind of wanted to just pause for a moment and kind of open it up to the group and just ask if there are any ways staff out there, programs out there have kind of used data and feedback like this year that felt newer or like felt really exciting um, with you all. And I have examples there, obviously, of like ways, but I would love to know specifics if anyone is open to sharing.
So we do all of our case notes. So every time we meet with a student, we just put our case notes into Navigate. And then as soon as those notes are completed, then a little micro survey goes out automatically to our students just saying, did you get everything you needed from your meeting? Is there anything that you didn't discuss and anything else you want to say? And so we just get that feedback. It goes out to automatically, and then we can just pull those at any point then.
And that's built into like that's like a woo kind of system, right? You guys have for the advising. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, so Navigate, I think it's an early alert system, yeah. And so, yeah, yeah.
Do you all pay for that, or is that like built? No, it's with them.
No, yeah, that's institutionally, yeah. Then with that, we can also pull reports for all tutoring. They can pull those for us. So any tutoring appointments, anything like that then as well.
We do, we use Microsoft Forms to kind of sort of survey students for what university visits they're interested in. We'll send it out as an RSVP if they want to attend a workshop that we need to have a head count for, things like that.
Okay. Anybody else?
We do at the start of the year, first contact. We bring them in. We have a list of our upcoming events, classroom, like college campus visits, workshops, and we have them mark which ones they're interested in, along with updated contact information. So we send them like, hey, you were really interested in this. This is when it's going to be. Come sign up for it.
Awesome. Can I ask for those, what is the percentage of like student participation? Maybe like I'm kind of curious if you guys have pretty high percentage of students that get those surveys that do it, or they tend to be lagging.
You kind of have the like frequent flyers who are always responsive and then hit or miss after that. We've been struggling since the pandemic to really get engagement back on track. So, I mean, we even take students out to dinner for graduation, and we usually have maybe 10 tops. No, even less than that, 6 or something out of maybe 40 graduates.
Yeah. That we hear a lot of, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know like with some of the unallowable funds, like through us and stuff. So like Linda at Portland State University, the SSS, has been trying to use some of those funds as like incentives for these sorts of things occasionally to try to get a little more engagement. But often what we hear is like the students that are already pretty locked in, and you hear from a lot, they're the ones who are happy to give you more opinions. And it's those ones you desperately want to learn information about that are kind of hard to reach.
We do an annual assessment every year, and we just did it about 4 weeks ago. And we send it out to all the students, and we have about 435 students with the 3 programs. And this year we got about 90 students fill it out. So that's what, a quarter of our students. And we also use the gift card incentive for them to fill it out.
I'm curious,
And
what kind of questions do you, because I do think it's really important to do like an end of year, not just for like the graduating kind of exit. So I'm kind of curious what, Amy, what you all ask of them in that.
We ask about everything. If they participated in Summer Bridge, what did they learn? Was it helpful? We ask about our course. We ask about our workshops, which we don't do a lot of because we don't have a lot of participants. Tutoring, peer mentoring, the events. So it's pretty long.
same here. We ask if they participated in each of these services that we line out, and then they'll kind of be fed into the follow-up questions about how useful it is, what they think of our space, that kind of thing. I don't have the results from it yet. I'm still waiting on their IR. But we had 66 respondents out of 160, so that was we're pretty happy with that this year. There is an incentive. We have $100 gift
Yeah.
card. Yeah.
That goes a long ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll see how long this I'm always trying to just not be me talking for 15 minutes in these. So I am trying to put together like this little kind of mini case study where we can kind of look at tangible data, because it's one thing to like talk about all this and the kinds of stuff you collect, but once you actually like have information, like, well, like what do you do with that data? Like what kind of changes do you make? So in this particular example, and I don't know if that's quite big enough, but you're the director of an SSS program serving 180, you offer kind of services, advising, financial literacy, tutoring, transfer support, and you collect student feedback in the fall, spring terms and track service usage throughout the year. So your APR is coming up and your team is reflecting how to use the data to improve services next year. So what I have here is kind of just some, it's all made up, but whatever. The different service areas that student feedback gave stuff on as it related to academic advising, financial literacy, tutoring, transfer, end of year kind of satisfaction survey. So this is kind of some of the data that we were seeing from students in my absolute made up example. And I am curious if there would be like, what would be some of the takeaways? Just kind of staring at feedback. And again, I know it's kind of removed. You don't know what these specifics are, but like, what are some of the things that you would look to change based on what we're seeing here? And maybe the why, right? This is kind of what we're trying to get at is like, how can we take, how do we replicate this within our own programs and what are we looking for?
Looks like they're not getting what they want out of financial literacy. So I would maybe try to address something that the areas that are very relevant for the student, budgeting and, you know, the basic stuff. Maybe provide some more career guidance, and, you know, maybe like ONET resources and things like that they could use.
And I like my take, especially looking at this too, is like they have a huge percentage of their students that are, you know, frequently doing advising. So like use like put in your advisors' heads, you know, if we know there are certain workshops that we always do, like you can kind of collect informal data stuff from students in those meetings. So if you know you're planning a financial literacy event a month from now, like every student you're meeting for the next 2 weeks, just like ask them what is stuff you wish you knew more about as related to financial literacy and almost collect that uh, impromptu, right? Because one of the most challenging pieces with trio students is just like getting base time or like time for them to complete surveys. So like often when you get them, you feel like you almost want to squeeze as much juice out of you can as you can out of it to ensure that the other stuff you're providing kind of matches what they need. I don't know. Any other thoughts or
I mean, the feedback is pretty helpful. I could see in all the areas what needs to be done, really. You know, maybe try to get some evening tutoring or maybe weekends. You know, we allow our tutors to tutor on Zoom and they can schedule outside of their regular hours if they want to.
what are my suggestions to, because what I find most helpful in this particular example, but having the actual student quotes or whatever, like if you're doing surveys that's just collecting like ranking a 1 to 5, like if you've ever done those before, like what's probably going to happen is there'll be like a lot of 5s and 4s, and you'll see like a couple 3s and maybe a 1, and you'll just kind of be like, well, the 1, you just kind of roll your eyes and go, there's always that student. And the 3s, you're like, all right, like whatever. But what you see is kind of like, all right, it's a pretty good job. And you just kind of move on. Like you don't really spend a lot of time in analyzing what went well or didn't necessarily go well. So asking more specific questions. And like, even if they just put 3-word responses, like those simple, what was your favorite thing? What was your least favorite thing? Like general comments, like asking that little bit more from them. Often it doesn't take much more time than scoring it on some made up scale. You can get way more like tangible, helpful pieces to what you're doing than just kind of score everything.
Definitely those text-based responses are so much more rich in information that you can use. if you let them have a text box to type in.
I would say as well, this kind of relates to some of the stuff we do with scholarships. I'm a pretty big proponent. If you're gonna have them score anything, make the scale tiny. Like rate it 1 to 3, 1 to 4. Because if you go 1 to 10, you might get like, what's the difference between a 6 and an 8? Like, I don't know. That's so different for each person. And if you have people that rank it in the 2s and 3s, like that moves the entire average so dramatically away from like the higher end. If you have people, so like the bigger scale you give something, the more room there is for kind of random variation. So if you just have students score like a 1, 2, 3, like you kind of have to earn a 3, which is like awesome. 2 is like average. So if they're like, oh, that was like, if they were rating it out of 10, they might give it like a 6 or 7. But if they're forced to go a 1, 2, 3, they might actually just put a 2 because they're like, I mean, it could have been better. So I'm not going to give it a full on 3. Here's a 2. And that almost, it's more informative than like if you just see an average distribution of data between 7, 8, 9s, like you'll just be like, oh, everybody loved it. And you're like kind of missing some of the smaller nuances and detail. So that is kind of a me thing. I like to keep it real narrow and like make people make kind of more distinct choices between, was this just awesome, average, or poor? That's kind of all I want to know. And I really shrink down the scaling that they have. So, okay. All right. So in terms of data collection strategy, and are you collecting enough and the right stuff? Kind of skip over this, maybe do it at the end here and just kind of present out some stuff first here. But some of the key considerations to keep in mind when you're looking at data collection is like aligning whatever your priorities are and your objectives are and making sure you have enough information as it relates to that. So that's a little more high level. Like obviously you should be monitoring your objectives. Like that shouldn't be something you just look at on the APR. You really want to like be looking throughout the year, where are we sitting? And you may have to do some projections, like is this student maybe going to graduate? Are we going to retain them for a future year? But kind of be monitoring those objectives, and then you can kind of adapt some of the services you're providing or even adapt your student caseload, because we know there's so much variation in terms of the kind of students you can bring in. A lot of our colleges like to send us the like project students that are like barely getting by and could like really use the services, and you're like, I'd love to help them, but if this moves my GPA below the like threshold I need to get prior experience points, like I don't want to threaten my staff's job in the process. So like it allows you to just make informed decisions around the kind of students you're bringing in, um, to align with like objectives and grant priorities. So like what are you doing, not so much in the collection, but just in terms of pulling reports in Bloom-in or looking at transcripts or grade checks and just kind of seeing where you're at in terms of long-term meeting those goals and objectives. And then one of the main things is like, how do you capture the student voice beyond some of those satisfaction surveys? Because uh, how can you leverage your students and their opinions and the student workers and some of those like superstar students? How can you even leverage like some of the work that they can do to help get opinions from students? Like you want to, the more of their experience that you can like put on paper and try to like organize is just going to help you provide a better experience to them. I think most of us know that like it's not that difficult to just on paper provide the services Trio says, because like nowhere in the grant does it mandate anybody show up. As long as you're offering the services, you're doing enough, you're not going to like lose your job. But if we really are invested in the student experience and helping them be successful, like we want to be adaptable to what they need and like how they want to hear it as well. Like the delivery message for how you're providing services can shift. So like ensuring that you are capturing like real student voices and feedback. Um, and then like, are you doing anything to track some of those non-academic indicators? So particularly in an environment where DEI is being just crushed out of higher ed, like there are things you can do to like gauge what is our sense of belonging in the program. Like, does it mean something that you kind of have this extra advisor in your trio corner, or that like there is this family or community of peers that come from your similar background? Like identifying motivation or obstacles, just like what are the things that are getting in the way outside of like the work you do with them day to day, but campus wide within their personal lives. And then how can you adopt services you provide to kind of provide the best service possible. So um, obviously most people are pretty familiar with like pre-post surveys. Not everyone always does the pre. It's the easiest way to like justify spending almost any trio dollars as long as you like measure before and after and show learning. Like you can justify almost any single workshop or spending any kind of money. So the pre-post surveys are just like a nuts and bolts method for trio programs to kind of justify any cost because we're helping educate students on whatever topic it is we're going over. Um, Monthly check-ins, reflection journals, these are meant to be for like students. It can be that annual student survey or focus group, but just like what are we doing to try to like gauge students, not only in like the services we're providing, but it can be like a check-in for just like how is college going? How are you doing right now? How your class is doing? Like we just want to kind of get a sense of where you are at so that way we can be responsive to your current needs. Because I can speak for myself as like a pre-college advisor. It was so easy to be like, this is FAFSA time, this is apply for college time, this is scholarship time. Now you got to pick where you need to go. And then you're like, oh yeah, like your grandma's sick. Like, shoot, like I don't know that we need to be like barreling through all of this school stuff or like getting through kind of the curriculum elements and losing touch with the human elements that like have you maybe wanting to make a pause right now, or like you're going through physics as a senior and it's like kicking your butt and you've never struggled in a course before and it's like messing with your confidence and you don't know if you're good enough for college anymore. Like that's a different hurdle to cross that is like unrelated to kind of the mechanics and the timeline of often what we do with students in trio. So those check-ins, reflection journals, just simple ways to kind of like pause kind of what you're doing on paper with generic students and like focusing in on the student that's in front of you. Um, Obviously having some kind of, I mean, this goes in the post surveys, but digital feedback form, like every event you do, every single thing you do, you should be getting feedback on, like without question. And if you're not, like even the most simple score this on a blankety blank, like this, use ChatGPT for this stuff, right? You just say, hey, here's the slides, here's the presentation. Like I'm doing this event, doing this workshop for students, and I want a post survey to collect feedback. It's going to give you at least a great starting point to put together some simple form where you can always collect feedback, whether it is field trip, workshop, um, if you can build it into advising and tutoring, like Sherry had said, like that would be amazing. But everything you do, there's no reason you can't collect some level of feedback. And then some of the stuff that's a little more complex, obviously, we heard some people talk about the annual student survey. I think that can be really valuable, especially for pre-college or four-year schools where like I know in my case, like we at least did like an exit interview as students graduated, and you got like all this great information. And I was, in hindsight, like, man, why weren't we just doing that at the end of every year? Like we could have really benefited from just kind of collecting information every single year. So that way the student is seeing changes and benefits that reflect their comments throughout their time in the program and not just kind of after the fact. And then focus groups, that's definitely something that's a bit more involved, but that is like almost sitting a panel down, like trying to extract information that is like very intentional and is trying to like um, result in like some real change based on that like robust student voice and their comments to you. So um, yeah, I'm combining these prompts together and kind of putting it back out there since I've been talking a bit. So are there any, I'm kind of curious, you know, based on what you're currently collecting, do you feel like anything's missing or what's, one insight you wish you had on your students or program or their progress, that from this past year that you didn't collect? Just kind of looking for those kind of diamond in the rough. What are the special areas that we wish we had more information on?
Matt, I know you've spent a lot of time talking beyond the APR, but in connection to the APR, one of the things that I've been thinking about and talking to programs about trying to align is what fields are reported on the APR and trying to make sure you're aligning your services that you're reporting in Bloom Student Access, whatever you're utilizing, just to make it easier for that data collection on the back end when you are doing your APR, and figuring out what buckets of services you're wanting to provide. If you are wanting to break it down, end up aligning still to those basic required services that you're reporting out on. At least for SSS, they offer, or they give just those required services and the referred required services for a number of students that are utilizing those. So to be able to easily track how many students are in fact receiving that service, that would be an easy way for data collection to be a lot easier for you if you're aligning those services right from the time the advisor's popping in that contact.
Just to the point of clarification, when like you get your GAN, is all that like listed what you're going to report on APR, or do you kind of not know until that is released?
I haven't seen a recent GAN, so I'm not sure. One of the directors can answer that, but I know that on the APR side, that hasn't changed. They just keep asking the required services.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be curious if the questions will change at all with the change in administration. Like if we'll see some additional things. Obviously, like the legs and regs events are not going to be adjusted, so like prior experience points isn't changed, but you may see some like new columns pop up, and it's always hard because we're like reporting a year back and then this new thing pops up and you're like, I didn't know I was supposed to collect that. So just be mindful that we might see new things pop up, because I do remember that happening more on like the upper bound side. If you're not familiar with it, like there's not a lot of students in that program, but the columns you report on are just like never ending. There are so many questions, and every year stuff would pop up and you were like, did you help this person get employment? And you're like, they're a freshman, but no, was I supposed to? Like, I don't know, I didn't track that. But now it's a question they ask. So okay. And I'll just go on this first. So I think it is important, in like some of the folks who've spoken out, like it sounds like there are some good like feedback loops, and it sounds like a lot of you are using this information, you're doing the year end, but I think it's really important to build just a culture of feedback and inquiry, and just like the constant like cycle of improvement. Like don't ever think what you're doing is perfect, even if it's awesome. Like just kind of remove some of the ego and just always be willing to be flexible and make changes. And especially as you get maybe new staff in, they're going to have ideas, and in the back of your head, you're like, oh God, we've done that before and it didn't go well, but like maybe it'll work this time, right? So like you always have to be open to trying stuff out, but just having that culture, the feedback loops is really important. So by having it part of your DNA, I think a really important element and something that is harder to do is like, how do you involve the students in kind of co-creating solutions? So obviously they're like giving you feedback, but especially if you're one of those who has peer mentors, who have student workers, like how can you involve them? Like those are such a great student project, and they can even make it part of their academics and like have it as like a larger research project. Maybe they can be the one that facilitates a focus group or a student-led survey that's a little more robust. Obviously, like we've had the privilege of like working with Bree, who's like on our board right now, that's a former trio student at Chemeketa and Oregon State, who like helped us put together. So like it also just looks really good to have like a student-led initiative as somebody who's like been really impacted and really likes this program to try to want to see, um, all the services you provide increase. So any way you can bring students in to the process is just going to improve it. And the more you can make it theirs, particularly with those college students, like they love to just own a thing, or have a sense of responsibility. So I think any way you can find to kind of hand them the reins a little bit, my hope is you'll get better outcomes. And then in terms of like closing the feedback loop, uh, you know, you want to share results and like show actions taken as a result of the data you collected. You don't just collect it and, don't even just like make some decisions internally. Like find ways to present it, share it with stakeholders, even if it's an annual document. Like I know different people do some newsletters. You can have a student story in there. You can show some of your objectives and like the outcome data that shows the high level success. But just having a lot of student quotes in there talking about how impactful something was, or showing the percentage of students who took part in tutoring or advising or attending a workshop or one of your college visits. And this goes well beyond like, especially in the pre-college environment. A lot of times you're like principals have no idea what you're really doing. So like if you can at the end of the year give them a thing that's like this many students visited college campuses throughout the year, or like this is the percentage of the of the 12 seniors that are in this graduating class at this high school, 11 of them are actually going to college, and just putting some simple numbers on a sheet of paper and handing it to some of those stakeholders, the superintendents, help reinforce like the value of the program in those schools and maintain some of the partnerships and their ability to like go above and beyond to ensure you have access to resources and to students and all those sorts of things. And obviously, it's most important you just encourage the like staff reflection and the team discussions on the data. So you want to make times in those staff meetings to decide what to do with the data collected, right? So you can put together a calendar, and at monthly staff meetings, like you really should be reviewing any surveys you've done, any data collected. This can be somebody's role, even on your team, to maybe put this together and just at least try to carve out some time to like actually look at what was collected and maybe take some notes to improve your processes um, for the next year. And then that also, because you're in the moment, it allows you to discuss like, how do we present this to those stakeholders, right? Like what are things we can maybe package and send out, or it's easier to do thank yous too, because it's so much effort goes into planning a lot of these things that we often don't love taking a lot of energy to like do all the thank yous afterwards. So even if you did a college visit, it'd be really nice to just send a quick thank you to like the admissions folks at the university that you visited, if you're pre-college or community college. And you can even send a few like student snippets. That stuff goes a long way to just like maintaining good relationships, so that way future years like it is super smooth and easy to continue to plan events with them, or any of the other departments you're working with on campus. Like it's always nice to get positive feedback. And you know when you present a workshop and then you just literally hear nothing, you just kind of like, I don't know, I think that went well, but who knows? We'll see if they ask me back again next year. So just like closing the loops and being able to present some of that stuff back to people can be really helpful. And then I think it's really important that like in an annual meeting, whether you're planning for next academic year at some kind of staff retreat, I think most people do that come summertime. You want to come full circle and just take all that information you collected and like, all right, how are we gonna, don't just like copy paste your whole schedule. You can start as that, but then how are we gonna like take the data and make changes or manipulations to kind of provide a better version of what we just did? But don't just totally, like if you went through all the effort of collecting that stuff, like just take 20 minutes to actually like stare at it a little closely and be like, all right, are there really any changes we need to make, or just some subtle kind of notes within each workshop or event that we can do to make it better? Um, and then more importantly, like, is there anything missing, or like, is there more information we should be collecting that would make this process better or smoother? Because the time to change your like methods of how you collect data is also probably that same time of year. So as you go through a whole academic year, you can ensure that like you are consistent in what you're collecting, and that way you've had an opportunity to make changes and like add more of the like student comment sections, or change the scale, or um, increase the number of surveys that you are doing, all those sorts of things. So it should be definitely built into just the structure and culture of when you're meeting as a staff, when you're having conversations about future planning. This needs to be a part of it as much as possible. Okay, so my hope is And like, we don't need to do this. I don't know. Maybe I'm curious. Is there anything that people maybe feel like hopefully you've taken away, or something that you want to start implementing next year that you maybe be willing to like share out? Again, I'm trying to just prompt ideas and like new areas from different folks on what is possible. And while you're maybe thinking about that, I'm going to put this in the chat. Might even pull it up on the screen. So speaking of, this is me touting OTA services, but if you're like, I don't got time for that, or like, hey, I would love to do a focus group, but I don't want to do it, but I have money to spend. Bree wanted agreed to like consult with us. So again, she's a TRIO alum, and they are going to University of Michigan for like data and evaluation, a master's program next summer, and was open to working with programs this summer to kind of work on maybe looking at your evaluation process or helping create a custom survey for you, and even doing the analysis and the data calculations after the fact, doing a focus group interview, even in person for like a full day. All of this stuff are elements that we can help offer if you don't have like the time or capacity to do it and you have some extra funds. So that page there goes over some of it. And there's like an inquiry form at the bottom. Again, all of this is done through like, we're just kind of helping facilitate it and invoicing it, but Bree would be the one working with you directly and doing a lot of the work. There's also kind of these like bundles, right? If you just want to put together a survey, have Bree do an analysis, send you the results, that is kind of like the 1,200. To add the focus group is 1,750. If you want to include some added costs, it could be 500, it could be as much as you want, as little as you want. If you want to have the like incentives so you can get gift card, we'll do a random drawing of gift cards for participants. You can even build that in where there's some incentives for your students doing these. So this is just an option if you are maybe interested in doing something a little more robust, or even again, this whole makeover piece is just kind of like, she'll take a look at what you're already doing and just provide a bunch of like thoughts and comments and improvements, and just kind of more just have a conversation around what are ways that we can improve the evaluation and methods that we're doing, and how we're making program improvements. So just kind of wanted to share that out. I know we still have about 2 months here before the end of the fiscal cycle, as a possibility, but yeah, coming back to the prompt, is there anybody, I don't know, is there any share outs of just things that people maybe want to start doing going into next year that maybe feels a little more creative than your basic post event survey?
I had really liked your idea of just incorporating into the regular staff meetings to bring forward any surveys that have happened from different workshops or trips, to just have that ongoing conversation so that it's not just the once a year review of everything. Thought that would keep it fresher too.
So I wanted to say that this year we have started using like a data management tool, and I know that we're a nonprofit, we're not a school entity, and so we have a little bit more freedom to do that. But we also recognized how important it was for us to collect that data from students and also from our staff. And so after, especially during the summer, or if they do like a big event, it's a staff survey, how everything went, who attended, how they felt it went, along with students. And just like everybody else, we do the incentives to try to get students to do it. But we have found that we started it a couple of years ago, and we found that that data is really important and helpful in us planning events and things that are going to be essentially interesting to the kids and impactful. And so we've also been more intentional in what we do, but we also you're right, Matt, when you said that investors or people grant, and not just Trio, because we have a bunch of other grants that we work with, they want to invest in what we're doing because they see the impact. And there are, students are able to say, what did you think of this? Share a little quote, and we're able to, share that out in our grant writing and also in our feedback to them. So it is super helpful, and it's amazing. And the person who's collecting all this data, we're hoping to see it really boost our understanding of what impact we are having on our youth. So it is important.
Um, just to take a brief moment, if you're like, oh, I'd love to share out all of our data, but like, how do I make it look pretty? There are two, there's probably more. This is an older one that I use kind of pre-Canva, but easily you can make a free account. You can see a lot of the templates are like behind the pro version. But Easily is kind of a site that was built to kind of generate templates for infographics. And then if you just search infographic on Canva as well, like you can see a lot of these models that let you just put in some quotes or data or timelines. Like there's a lot of stuff you can play around with that you can just kind of take a design you like, maybe throw your photo in instead of what they got here, and then you just substitute your data and your information on there. So it does not need to be like a super like overwhelming process to kind of translate the raw data to something you can share out with people.
Matt, could you share that first one that you showed us? Easily or whatever it's called. Please.
I was muted. All right, just to close up here, uh, just quick little recap. You want to evaluate what you have, but like don't stop there. Don't collect stuff you have no intention of using, and just make sure there's like purpose and intention to these processes. Like it's every bit as part of your day-to-day job, even though it always feels extra. It's just going to make things run more efficiently and better outcomes for you to just kind of build it into your day-to-day work. And then again, try to engage student staff in the process as much as possible. Don't just have this be forms the director builds that goes out, they collect the data, they're the only ones that look at it. Like make it really inclusive to your entire process. And then when you're putting tools together, look for, obviously survey templates. You should be doing that as much as you can. Uh, if you're unsure how to put those together, again, I'm not ashamed to just say like that these are where those writing AI prompts are really good at just giving you a bunch of, kind of generic information that can help uh, regardless of what it is, whether it's an individual workshop, year-end survey, reflection questions. Like I think it's not a bad idea to kind of build in you know, tools that check in with your students, even if it's quarterly, and just kind of see where they're at that are kind of separate from what you're offering and are they liking the services and just kind of these individual check-ins that, need to be, they're meant to be kind of just housed with that advisor, the person that's working most closely with the student, but just helps inform how you're approaching that student, what you're doing with them, and just making it more personalized in terms of the services we offer. And then if you're unfamiliar with like the focus groups or everything that goes into that, like, you know, develop tools that go into kind of the protocols and that entire process for putting a focus group together. And that's obviously, like I shared, something that we can help out with. But um, yeah, you can never have too much data as long as you're going to like do something with it and use it and hopefully not overwhelm your students. But I think if students see their feedback leads to like positive change and they're being listened to, they will be more than happy to fill out surveys and feedback all the time. What you don't want is like the reason I don't fill out a customer feedback form for every purchase I make in the world is like I don't imagine they're gonna like change their delivery model for every Amazon thing or every thing I buy at Safeway. So I don't usually fill those out. So you don't want to be that. You don't want to overwhelm them with surveys and then never really like deliver any changes. So yeah, I do not have anything else. So any final thoughts or questions?
I was just wondering, so for like collecting the student quotes of their experiences, I know we normally use anonymous surveys for the feedback, but for things like that, like, do you need to be collecting student names? And is there a reason like you shouldn't be doing anonymous surveys?
It's a good question because I think like if you're just sharing out student quotes, like even sharing it anonymously is okay. Yeah, I don't know. It depends on like if it's that year-end survey. I don't know. I'm curious. Like those of you who do it, do you collect a name or is that done anonymously as well?
Ours is anonymous. But if I wanted to use somebody's quote, like from a different kind of survey, if I had their name, I would just ask them. Or sometimes people will say something in an email and I might ask them if I can use it for our marketing or whatever. But I have used anonymous quotes in some marketing materials too, just kind of like short, here's what our students say kind of thing.
Yeah, ours is anonymous as well. But like Michelle, we do use short quotes like in our brochure with just maybe a first name.
Yeah, and like if you're looking to share like full student stories, that kind of thing, or what we do with like the fact book, like if that's what you're trying to present to folks, like I do think that is a slightly almost different process. So in general, you're probably going to get better feedback if they know it's anonymous than attaching their name to it. So yeah, I don't think there's any like citation police that are going to be like, well, who said that? And you're like, student did. I don't know. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. I see a lot of SSS people. The moment, like we keep being, there was like a COE state leaders call, like right after the town hall this morning. So, Robin, I don't know. I don't know that the timeline has changed at all, but basically, as soon as we know something, like it could happen as early as I heard someone say tomorrow, maybe by the first, whatever it is. But we kind of have the request in that I think Wyden is the senior senator, so Alex is his educational staffer. Like as soon as they know something, let us know. But me and Robin were like, man, we have so many programs with banked years though that you're not usually on that initial slate to begin with. So like, I don't know, as soon as we know something, you all will know. I'm not opposed to coming back into work because they'll probably release it like super late on a Friday when they do it. So I'm not opposed to just coming in late on a Friday and making phone calls to try to let people know you still have a job. So, but yeah, nothing particularly new on that front.
Thank you both.
Yeah, thanks for all your help. We appreciate you all very much. OTA's been huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
See you
great
later.
to see all of you multiple times in one day.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Well, have a wonderful afternoon.
See ya.
Thanks so
Take
much,
care,
Matt, for
everyone.
hosting that.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Take